It's been years since I've celebrated Easter, and I've certainly never celebrated it like this. It started on the first week of April, though I can't remember exactly when. I'd been keeping my nephew that weekend. Kid's 5, and he's pretty cool. He was excited about Easter, as kids that age usually are, and it's a big deal in my brother's house. When he came to pick him up, they asked if I wanted to come decorate Easter baskets that weekend. But I shook my head. Sorry, bud. I don't really do Easter. Kev, my nephew, looked a little sad. But why, Uncle Tom? I opened my mouth to answer, but one look at my brother made me think better of it. We'd grown up in a household that was very religious, and while he and his wife were still very much a part of that world, I had gone in the opposite direction. I didn't really have much to do with that part of my childhood anymore, and it was sometimes a sticking point between my brother and I. I love Kev, but I really didn't want to dredge up a lot of old memories again. I think my brother was hoping that I would find my way back to the faith on my own, but there wasn't a lot of chance of that. He's got to work that day. Right, Tom? My brother asked, giving me an out. Yeah, I said, nodding along. Sorry, kiddo. Lots of work to do before Easter. Okay, Kevin said, looking sad as he and his dad headed out. So after he went home, I was cleaning up and found a blue plastic egg sitting between the couch cushions. It was just a plastic egg, nothing special, but I couldn't recall having seen it before. I figured it belonged to Kevin, and I put it aside in case he wanted it back. I didn't think much of it at the time, but I have to wonder now if maybe it was the first one. A couple of days later, I flopped down on the couch after a long day at work and heard the crackle of plastic under the cushion. I popped up, thinking I'd broken the remote or something, but as I lifted the couch cushion, I found 2 more plastic eggs. One was green and one was sky blue, and they were both empty, broken in half. I put them back together and set them on the counter with the other ones, as I shook my head and flipped through the usual bunch of shows on Netflix. When Friday came around, I was ready for the weekend. It had been a long week, and I was ready for 2 days of relaxation. I opened the cabinet where I usually keep my hamburger helper and stepped back as 4 of the colorful plastic eggs came falling out. They broke once they hit the dirty linoleum, and I was thankful that they were empty. I grimaced as I bent down to get them. A yellow, a red, and 2 green ones. They were just sitting there as I squinted at them. I'd opened this cabinet yesterday. There hadn't been any eggs in them. What the hell was going on here? I took out the beef stroganoff and set to cooking, but the eggs were never far from my mind. I thought about calling my brother, but I shook my head as I decided against it. The kiddo was just playing a little joke, maybe pretending to be the Easter Bunny. We would laugh about it next time he came over, and he would say that he got me, and we'd both have a good chuckle about it. The eggs were on my mind as I went to bed that night. The pile growing on the counter, and I think that was why I had the dream. It was late, around 1 or 2, and I'd fallen asleep on the couch. I woke up slowly. The TV dimmed as it asked me if I were still watching Mad Men. I wasn't quite sure if I was actually awake or asleep. My apartment was dark, the only light coming from my dim television and the fast-moving lights from between my blinds. And as I lay there trying to figure out if I was awake or not, I heard a noise. It was weird, like listening to a heavy piece of furniture bump around. And as it glumped around behind my couch, it sang a little song. It wasn't a very pleasant rendition, and it sent chills down my spine. Here comes Peter Cotton. cottontail. Thump, thump, thump. Coming down the bunny trail. Thump, thump, thump. Hippity, hoppity, Easter's on its way. I turned my head a little, seeing a shadow rising up the wall, and something old crept into me. It was a memory from a long time ago, a half-remembered bit of trauma that refused to die. My brother and I had been in our bed, listening to that same sound as it came up the hall. It was like a nightmare. The voice that sang something so similar. And as I sat up and prepared to yell at whoever or whatever was in my house to get out, I shuddered awake and found out I was alone in my apartment. The TV was still on and the lights still flickered by behind the blinds, but the place was empty besides me. That day I found no less than 10 plastic eggs. There was no rhyme or reason to it. I found 4 in the kitchen, 2 in the living room, 2 in the bedroom, and 2 in the bathroom. The ones in the bathroom definitely hadn't been there yesterday. One was in the sink, one was on the lid of the toilet. I would have noticed them for sure, and that made me think that my dream might have been more than that. Unlike the first few eggs I had found, these eggs had messages in them. It was just a slip of paper, like a fortune in a fortune cookie, and it seemed to be lines from the song that I had dreamed about the night before. Hippity hoppity, happy Easter day, Peter Cottontail. They were spread throughout, and it gave me an odd twinge to see the whole poem there in bits and pieces. I remembered it. Of course I did. She used to hum it all the time, and it drove our parents crazy. I called my brother that afternoon, wanting to ask about the eggs. "Thomas, always good to hear from you. Hey, weird question. Did Kev leave some stuff behind when he came to hang out?" "Stuff? What kind of stuff?" "Plastic eggs. I found about 20 of them sitting around my apartment since the first, and I don't know where they're coming from." I heard the chair in his office creak as he leaned back, and I could just picture him scratching his chin. "No, we don't usually do the plastic eggs. We have the eggs from the hens, so we usually just color those. Speaking of, we're coloring eggs next week, and I know Kevin would really like to have his favorite uncle there." I inhaled sharply, biting back what I wanted to say to him, not wanting to have this conversation again. "Mark, you know I can't." My brother clicked his tongue. "It's been years. Are you still on about that?" Yeah, I am still on about that. I don't understand why you aren't." "Look, I miss Catherine as much as you do, but Tom, you have to move on. What happened to her was awful, but you can't hold it against the world forever." "No, what's awful is that you continue to bring Kevin to the same church where that monster held congregations every weekend. Who knows if they got all the filth out when they took Brother Mike. He started to raise his voice, but I heard him get up and close the door before getting out of control. "They never proved that Brother Mike was the one that took her. It's not fair to turn your back on God because of one bad apple." It was quiet for a long moment. I wanted to rail at him, to ask him how he could possibly still have any faith in the church. That place that made men like Michael Harris. I wanted to say these things, but I bit my tongue, just like always. "I won't celebrate Easter, Mark. I'm sorry if that offends you and your sensibilities, but my faith died when they found out what Brother Mike did to those kids. They never found Catherine's body among the..." But I hung up on him. I was done talking about it. After another week of finding eggs, I had probably collected about 30 of them in all. After the pile started spilling over the edges of the countertop, I started throwing them away. They clearly weren't Kevin's, so there was no reason for me to keep them. The notes inside began to become less cutesy as well, if ever they had been. The Easter poem about Peter Cottontail took a darker quality. Lines like, "Through your windows, through your doors, here to give what you adore," were in some of them when I put them together, but it was the ones that talked about taking things that got my attention. It took me a while to get it together, but once I did, I could feel my hands shaking. Peter has fun and games in store for children young and old galore, so hop along and find what your heart desires. I started dreading finding them. This was no longer a cute game that a kid was playing. This was beginning to feel like the antics of a stalker. Before you ask, I went the day after my phone call with my brother and had the locks changed. My landlord was pretty understanding. It happened sometimes. And I felt pretty safe after the locks on my front and back door were changed. I thought that would be the end of it. No more weird little presents, but when I got up the next day and found 10 eggs stacked neatly along the back lip of my couch, I knew it wasn't over. The longer I thought about the eggs, the more I remembered something I'd been trying to forget. The longer they lived in my brain, the more I thought about Catherine. Catherine was the middle child. Mark was the big brother, about 4 years older than me, and I was the baby of the family. Catherine was slap in the middle, 2 years older than me, but 2 years younger than Mark. She was a bit rebellious. Our parents were strictly religious, the kind of religion that didn't celebrate holidays if there wasn't a religious bend. Christmas was all about Christ, and they were of the opinion that he was the only gift anybody needed. They gave us clothes and fruit, but Catherine always asked for toys. Thanksgiving was okay, but Halloween was right out. "We won't be celebrating the devil's mischief in this house," my mother always said. Catherine, however, didn't like missing out on free candy. Candy was something else that was strictly limited, so when Catherine learned that people were just giving it away, she knew she had to get in on it. Catherine started making her own costumes and sneaking out on Halloween. Dad was never able to catch her with the other kids in the neighborhood. She always hid the candy, saying they must have just missed her, but the wrappers Mark and I found were harder to make excuses about. She shared, she was kind, and loved us very much, and neither of us ever sold her out or gave up the candy. Easter, however, was another holiday that she and my parents argued about. Mom and Dad were unmoving on the fact that Easter was about Christ, but Catherine said it could also be about candy and eggs and the Easter bunny. Catherine, for as long as I could remember, loved the idea of the Easter bunny. She read books about him at school, far from my parents' prying eyes. She talked to her friends about it and learned about egg hunts and chocolate rabbits. She ingested anything she could about the holiday, and it became a kind of mania in her. She didn't understand why we couldn't color eggs or have Easter baskets or do anything that the other kids did, and it seemed like every year the fights between her and my parents got worse and worse. We were forbidden to color eggs. They threw away several stuffed rabbits she got from friends, and they wouldn't allow any books in the house with an amorphous rabbit in them. Then, when I was 8 and she was 10, something happened. It was something I thought I remembered, but I wondered if I was remembering it at all. A week after Easter, I woke up to find the floor of my room covered in plastic eggs. Some of the fear I felt was left over from the dreams I'd had the night before. Was it a dream? I wondered. I wasn't so sure. I couldn't sleep on the couch anymore. Not after that night I had woken up to the weird little poem. But as I lay in my bed, I dreamed I could hear the strange galumphing sound. Thump, thump, thump. It would come up the hall, the soft sound of something moving on its back legs. Thump, thump, thump. I'd pulled the covers up to my chin, shaking like a child who fears a monster, and as I pulled my knees up to put my head under the covers, I heard it. It was the song that took me back to the day, long ago, where I'd lay under my covers and hoped it would stop. I can still hear Mark's raspy breathing as he tried not to cry, but his fear was as palpable as mine. Here comes Peter Cottontail. Thump, thump, thump. Hopping down the bunny trail. Thump, thump, thump. Hippity, hoppity, Easter's on its way. I lay there as a grown man, hearing that song and shivering. Something else happened, too. Something came back that I just couldn't catch in my teeth. Something happened that night when I was a kid. Something happened that I'd blocked out. But the harder I tried to remember it, the slipperier it got. The morning I woke up to all those eggs on the floor was the morning I called Dr. Gabriel. Dr. Gabriel was a therapist I'd seen off and on over the years. He had helped me make peace with Catherine's loss, but hadn't managed to bring me to the point where I could come to peace with my parents' religion. I would never be able to do that. The religion was what had killed Catherine, and I couldn't forgive them or my brother for clinging to it. I knew that the church had helped him through our sister's loss, but I couldn't find that peace. I hadn't seen him in 2 years, but the poem in the eggs made me itch to call the police. Come along the trail, my boy. Come and find your long-lost joy. Hippity hoppity, Catherine's waiting there. Dr. Gabriel got me in for an emergency appointment, and as I lay on the couch, he asked me how things had been since my last appointment. Something's happening to me, Doc. Something's happening, and it makes me think about Catherine. Why don't you tell me what's been going on? He said, tapping his pencil on the paper. Something is leaving eggs in my apartment. They're hiding them for me to find, and they have messages in them. Messages I feel are becoming threatening. Is this something real, or is it something that's only in your mind? It has to be real. I keep throwing them away, and the bags are full. Other people can see them, too. It can't be something I'm imagining. The things that are happening, though, they remind me of the night that Catherine was taken. I need to know what happened that night. I need to see that memory that I have locked away. Are you sure? Dr. Gabriel asked. Those memories are something that you've avoided for a long time, Tom. I'd told him most of it, but Dr. Gabriel knew I'd been holding back. He knew that once I had a sister. He knew that when she was 10, she went missing. He knew that the police had searched the church and discovered that the pastor, Brother Michael, had been responsible for the deaths of 12 of his parishioners' children over 4 years. The police interrogated him for hours until he finally led them to the remains of 10 children that he had buried in the woods behind the pastor's house, next to the church. The state of South Carolina gave him the death penalty, and in 2010, they'd killed him via lethal injection. The body of Catherine was never discovered, but my dad testified that Michael had been spending a lot of time with her at church. He had keys to our house. He had babysat us on multiple occasions, and when the cops could find no evidence of a break-in, they ran down a short list of people who could have gotten in. They found Pastor Michael with a child in his trunk when they came to question him, a boy I went to school with who could have been his latest victim. This had given them the cause they needed to search his house, which was how they found the evidence they needed to hold him, and how they got him to confess to 11 counts of murder. 11, but never to Catherine's murder. He went under the needle, saying that he never hurt her. All of those things Dr. Gabriel knew, but I needed him to pull out the thing that I had repressed for all these years. I need you to put me under, Doctor. I need to know what it is that I can't get a hold of. Are you sure? He asked again. You've always been opposed to this sort of thing. I think I need to know, because I think that whatever is happening now has something to do with it. Dr. Gabriel said that he would try, and as he got me into what he called a receptive state, he talked about where I wanted to go back to. Let's take you back to Easter, 2003. You were 8 years old, living in your parents' house with your siblings. Go there in your mind. I want you to remember something, a trigger from then, a smell or a sound or something to help guide you. Do you have it? I nodded, remembering the smell of popcorn that Catherine used to make every afternoon as a snack. Okay, let that take you back. Let it bring you to where you need to be. What do you see? For a moment, I didn't see anything. I just lay there thinking of popcorn. But then I remembered something and changed the smell slightly in my mind. Catherine's popcorn was always slightly burnt. She couldn't operate the microwave as well as Mark, and as I lay there smelling burnt popcorn, I fixed on the moment I wanted. It was one of the last times I remember eating burnt popcorn, and the taste of it suddenly filled my mouth. I'm on the couch. We're watching a Bible Man VHS tape and eating popcorn. Normally, I would share it with Catherine, but she and my parents are fighting again. Catherine wants to go to the spring dance at school, but my parents won't let her. They say that she can go to a dance at the church, but now they're yelling about Easter instead. Catherine is saying it's unfair that she can't go to the dance, and it's unfair that she can't celebrate Easter the way she wants. She wants baskets and eggs and chocolate, and my dad is yelling that those kinds of things are for pagans and agnostics. He won't let her make the holiday about anything but Christ. And she's telling him how she won't celebrate any Easter if she doesn't get her way. She's storming off and leaving me on the couch. My parents are still fuming and talking in low voices. Good. I heard the scratch of his pencil. What else do you remember? I went to Catherine's room to make sure that she was okay, and I saw her praying. What was she praying for? Dr. Gabriel asked. I thought she was praying to God like we usually do, but she was praying to the Easter Bunny for some reason. The doctor made a thoughtful sound and told me to go on. She prayed for the kind of Easter she wanted, the kind of Easter she always wanted. She asked him to come and show her parents that he was real and to help her get the Easter she deserved. Then she noticed me, and I thought she was going to kick me out, but she actually invited me to come pray with her. She told me that if we prayed, the Easter Bunny would come and give us a great Easter. Better than one that we'd ever had. What did you do? I was 8. I'd been raised in the church, and I told her it didn't feel right. I closed the door, and I left her to it. Did you tell your parents? No. But I wish I had. What happened next? We ate dinner. We went to bed. Life went on. My sister didn't talk to my parents much, and they seemed to want an apology. She wouldn't, and she went to bed without supper a few nights. It was life in general for us, but the next thing I remember vividly is waking up a few nights later. What woke you up? A thumping sound, like something heavy jumping instead of walking. It sang the Peter Cottontail song, and as it came down the hall, I remember getting under my covers and being scared. Did you see it? He asked, and I felt my head shake slowly. I was under the covers. I think Mark was too. We were both still kids, and it was scary. I remember hearing something. What did you hear? It slipped, but I grabbed for it. I lost it again, but I caught it by the tail before it could escape. I dug my fingers in and held on, drawing it out as it came into focus. I heard Catherine. She came out of her room, and I heard her talk to it. What did she say? Dr. Gabriel asked, clearly becoming interested. She asked if he was the Easter Bunny. He said he was, and he was here to grant her prayers. He said he was going to take her to a place where she could have her perfect Easter. She sounded happy, and she said that was all she ever wanted. Tom, he asked, almost like he was afraid to ask it, did this person she was talking to sound like the pastor of the church, the one they say murdered her? I thought about it and felt my head shake again. No, he didn't. I don't think I had ever heard of this person before. He hopped off, and I think he must have been carrying her. When he hopped off, it sounded like the same as the hopping I keep hearing in my apartment. Scritch, scratch, scritch, went the pencil. Tom, do you believe that whatever this is that took your sister is coming back to harass you or something? I don't know. I just know that's what it seems like. Something I hadn't told him. Something I realized that I needed to as he was bringing me out was that if it was some kind of real Easter bunny, then there was only one explanation. If it was coming after me, then someone had to be calling it. I called my brother after my meeting with the therapist and asked him to meet me somewhere we could talk. The park down the road from Mom and Dad's old house, I said, and to my surprise, he agreed. We met about 5, the sun sinking low, and he seemed ill at ease as I pulled up. He was sitting on the swing set, the park abandoned this late in the afternoon, and I joined him on the one beside him. We sat for a moment, just swinging back and forth, before Mark sighed and asked what I wanted. We didn't come together often, and it was clearly making him a little uncomfortable. I need to know what you remember from the night that Catherine disappeared. Mark blinked at me. What? The night Catherine disappeared. What do you remember? He looked away, a clear tell that he was about to lie to me, and soldiered on. Nothing. I was asleep. I didn't see. Bullshit, Mark. I heard you. You were just as scared as I was. I know you heard something. I'm hoping it's the same thing I remember, so I can stop telling myself that I made it up. He started to lie again, but seemed to feel guilty about it. Okay, I was awake. At least I think I was. I don't know. It was like a nightmare. I heard that rabbit song that Catherine used to sing all the time. I heard that heavy whump sound as it hopped up the hall. Then I heard her talking to it. When they said that Pastor Michael had taken her, I thought it must have been him, and I figured I was dreaming. Is that what you remember? The same, I said, looking into the setting sun, despite the way it made me squint. I remember the Peter Cottontail song and the creepy way he sang it, And after the session I had with Dr. Gabriel, I remember her talking to it. He swung for a minute, the chains clinking rustily before he spoke again. So why bring it up? It was Pastor Michael. Everybody knows that. I don't think it was, I said, and it felt like someone else was saying it. I think the Easter Bunny came and gave her exactly what she'd been praying for. I expected him to tell me I was crazy, but he drew a breath and shook his head. You remember her doing that too, huh? I saw her more than once. She prayed to that rabbit like he was Jesus himself. Don't be blasphemous, he said offhandedly. There's no such thing as the Easter Bunny. It's made up. Everything's made up, I said, until someone decides it isn't. Regardless, something has been leaving these eggs in my apartment, and they have some pretty cryptic messages in them. Which means, he asked, it means that someone probably asked this thing to help me have a real Easter, and I think I might know who. He gave me a warning look, but I was pretty sure I knew already. Kevin seemed pretty upset that his favorite uncle couldn't celebrate Easter with his family. He loves the Easter Bunny. He loves Easter. Maybe he loves them enough to ask them for help. Pfft, he loves Santa Claus and Jesus, too. Have either of them visited you? I shrugged. Maybe he never asked. This is crazy, Mark said, darkness setting around us as evening took hold. This is the craziest thing I've ever heard. Why would he do that? What possible reason could he have for doing something like that? He's 5, Mark. Things that make sense to kids don't mean much to us. Monsters under the bed, lucky pennies, sidewalk cracks, holding your hand past a graveyard. Hell, childhood is basically all ritual, if you think about it. Mark opened his mouth to say something, but his phone went off then. He fished it out and let the thoughts sigh out. It's Melissa. She's probably wondering why I'm not home yet. He answered the phone, and he had started to tell her something when she spoke over him. Her voice was shrill and scared, and the longer she talked, the worse Mark looked. His jaw trembled, his eyes got wide, and he was up and walking to his truck before she had finished. I asked him what was going on and tried to figure out what was happening, but he didn't tell me much until the truck was running and he was half out of the parking lot. I had to almost stand in front of his truck, and he yelled at me before juking around me and speeding off. Kevin's gone. He just disappeared out of the backyard, and Melissa doesn't know where he is. That was a week ago, and I'm still not sure what to do. Kevin's gone. The trucks he was playing with in the backyard are still there, but my nephew seems to have disappeared without a trace. I stayed up all night, helping Mark search the woods, but the police are absolutely stumped as to where he could have gone. It was like the ground just swallowed him up. But I didn't find out where he was until I got home. It was morning. The sun was coming up, and I stepped into my apartment. I had intended to catch an hour or so before going out again, but the basket on my table froze me in place. It was a floral print with a lot of pastels and soft colors, and the basket was full of technicolored green grass. Sitting in the grass was a picture, something that had been snapped on an old Polaroid camera, and a single plastic egg. In the egg was a poem that gave me chills. Kevin and Peter Cottontail have hopped down the bunny trail, hippity hoppity, where he's gone to stay. He lives with Mr. Cottontail, here with Catherine beyond the veil, hippity hoppity, happy Easter day. The picture was of Kevin and a grown woman, a woman who looked a lot like Catherine. Her hair was a little grayer, her eyes had a few more crow's feet, but the resemblance was uncanny. She was smiling, but it was the kind of smile you get to cover a fear response. Kevin was with her, looking scared and a little ruffled, and he wasn't even bothering with a smile. At the bottom, written in a heavy Sharpie, was Kevin's first Easter with Aunt Catherine. I'm going to the police, but I don't know how much good they will be. I just pray this is some kind of sick bastard that kidnaps kids and not the alternative. The alternative is too weird to even consider. I hope we can find Kevin before it's too late. Before he's just another victim of this sadistic rabbit and his holiday kidnapping spree.